What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So today I want to discuss whom Ilia Topuria should fight next. And that's sort of a multifaceted question. So before I discuss possible matchups, I need to first ask, will he come back? Because he, of course, is very hurt, very injured, orbital bone, all that kind of stuff. That's going to take quite a bit of recovery. And on top of that, we've seen fighters like him get derailed, suffer punishing losses, and kind of fall off the rails, sort of have a big career nosedive, and not fight for very long after that. People like Conor McGregor, people like Ronda Rousey, people like Brock Lesnar. However, and this bodes well for Ilia, at least for him having at least one more fight, I don't think we've seen any of those guys just lose once and then dip. Because Conor McGregor, he lost to Diaz, he won the rematch narrowly, beat Alvarez, lost to Khabib, beat Cerrone, lost to Poirier twice, retired, and now he's coming back to fight Holloway. Ronda Rousey, she lost to Holly Holm, and then she lost to Amanda Nunes. So she only had 2 losses and then retired. Brock Lesnar, he lost to Cain Velasquez, and then he came back and lost to Alistair Overeem. So he had 2 losses and then retired, and then even he came back and fought Mark Hunt. So, again, the kind of obvious parallels, the obvious people to point to, they didn't just lose once and never return. So even in a worst-case scenario where, like, Ilia comes back, loses again, and then retires, or comes back, loses again, retires, and then comes back later, or something like that. Even in a worst-case scenario, it stands to reason he'll probably fight at least once more. So that's just sort of comparing him to other historical characters, but he's also expressed on social media an interest in coming back. He's expressed a desire to come back strong. He's expressed a desire to get a rematch eventually with Justin Gaethje. So I reckon he'll be back. Okay, I'm an Ilia fan. I hope he comes back, and I hope he looks good. I hope he still adds to his legacy and resume. I'll be disappointed if he just sort of fizzles out. I'll be disappointed if he comes back, gets knocked out, 1 or 2 times and then retires or something. That'll feel very anticlimactic and like there was a lot of wasted potential. So I'd like to see him come back, and I'd like to see him do well. So that's that covered. The next natural question is, should he come back at 155 or should he go back down to 145? Now, this one's tricky for me because, and I've covered some of this in previous videos, I did a video where I basically said, like, which fighters at 155 can Ilia beat? And thankfully for him, I think he can beat all of them. I wouldn't pick him to beat all of them, but I think he's got a real shot against everyone. I think he's got a real shot in a Justin rematch. I think he's got a real shot against Arman, a real shot against BSD. I wouldn't pick him to beat any of those 3, but I think he's got a shot. I think he would beat Max in a rematch. I think he would beat Charles in a rematch. I think he would beat Patty. I think he'd probably beat Connor. So, there's still possibility for him to have success. There's even possibility for him to become a champion again. However, I've said as well that he is clearly a featherweight. And people have whined about that and said, well, how come he's not ranked at featherweight anymore? How come he gave up his belt if he's a featherweight? And it's like, I'm talking about his frame. I'm talking about his size, his body type. Yes, he has vacated the featherweight belt, and I think the intention was to permanently move up, and the intention was to eventually chase Islam all the way up to 170. But you can just look at the guy and see he's not a lightweight. Even when he was down at featherweight, he was not massive. I know he claimed that he was having a hard time with the weight cut, and like I've said before, maybe he's a thicker dude. Maybe he holds water worse than some people. Maybe it is harder for him than it should be. But just looking at his size, he is very small. He was much smaller than Justin. And Justin is smaller than Patty. He's just not a lightweight. He is a featherweight who has gone up to lightweight. That's what he is. It's not quite as extreme as it looked when Volkanovski went up to fight Islam, but it's pretty fucking close to that. Okay, he's closer to Volk in size than he is to Islam in size, is Ilia. So, he is a featherweight. And I think if we were to do a similar rundown of, whom does Ilia beat at 145, he beats a lot more of them than he beats at 155. So, he could just go down to 45. He could just say, look, I went up, I won the belt, I beat a great fighter in Charles Oliveira. No one can take that away from me. I am a 2-divisional champion. No one can take that away from me. But my eyes were bigger than my stomach. I couldn't cut it with everyone in that division. Justin got the better of me. And yeah, I'm too small for that weight class. I'm going back down. And I'm going to go on a tear at 145. and I'm going to create such a run down there that everyone's going to forget I ever lost at 155. I think that's possible. I think that might be the smartest thing to do. And I think if he did that, the smart people, or I mean, I don't mean to be so, I'm right and you're wrong, but like, I feel like the more serious analysts will say that, yeah, he lost up a weight class, but that's not a huge deal. You know, I've compared it to Demetrius Johnson losing to Dominic Cruz at 135. You know, it would be like Volk losing to Islam again at 155. Like, that's not a huge deal. If you're a great, if you're one of the greats in your actual weight class and you go up to another weight class and you have mixed success, that's not a big deal. Okay? And again, he did still beat Charles. Charles beat Justin. Charles beat Max. Charles almost beat Armin. Charles beat, Gamrot. Like, Charles is good, you know? So that still counts for a lot. That's still a very, very meaningful success in two weight classes, even if Justin ultimately kind of beat the shit out of him. Excuse me. So that's on the table. Just go back down to 145. And from that point of view, that kind of makes most sense. However, there's two caveats that make this a little iffy for me. One, like, I think it would still look good in the eyes of the broader public, because again, I might think that the like hardcore analysts will give him credit if he just goes back down to 145 and just like kind of becomes a reigning champion again. But I think it'll still look better to the broader public if he can exit 155 on a win. So like, picture this scenario. He beats Charles Oliveira, wins the belt, loses to Justin, looks good for the first half, almost finishes him in the second, but it falls apart and then he gets finished. That happens, but then he comes back and he beats someone like Mauricio Hufi, who's a guy I think he really could beat. I think stylistically there's a lot there for Ilia. Very dangerous fight. I'm sort of 50-50 on that one, but that's like winnable. I kind of like his chances more against Hufi than I do against Armin or BSD. Let's say he does that. Or let's say he beats Paddy Pimblett. Like, let's say he beats one of these guys who's still up there, who's still ranked, possibly even top 5, but who he's got a good chance against, and who's a big dude. BSD is a big dude. Hoofy's a big dude. Paddy's a big dude. Proper lightweights. Let's say he beats one of these guys. Then he goes down to 145. And he says, okay, it wasn't all, it didn't end on a sour note at 155. I won the belt. I lost the belt. I took out a top contender. I took out a proper lightweight. And I came back down, and now I'm champion, and now smooth sailing. That would be a very easy pill for the masses to swallow, I think. The downside there is that should he get that victory, he's going to want to stay at 155, right? If he beats Paddy, if he beats Hoofy, BSD, whomever, he's going to want to stick around. He's going to want to rematch Justin if Justin is still champion, or he's going to want to fight whoever the champion is and get his damn belt back. So that's where, as much as like that might be a best case scenario, I just, knowing what I know about the human mind and knowing what I know about the mind of an elite competitor, I know he's going to want to stick around at 155 if he gets a win over a ranked dude. So that's sort of a thing where, like, hypothetically, in an idealized scenario, I might even recommend that. But in reality, I might not recommend that, because I know that if that pans out the way I hope for the first step, which is him winning his comeback fight at lightweight, that there's no fucking way he's going down to featherweight. So, make of that what you will. The other issue with him going down to featherweight straight away, though, because I just said that one issue is that, he could get another ranked win at 155 and sort of end his time at 155 on a higher note before then going back down to featherweight. That's one reason not to next go down to featherweight. The other reason is that whilst he could be really successful at featherweight, like, I would pick him to beat Volk in a rematch. I'd pick him to beat Arnold Allen and, like, most of the people filling out the top 15 at 145. There's still a couple of troubling matchups down there. So Diego Lopez is one of the top fighters, right? I mean, he worked his way up to a title fight against Volkanovski. He lost it. He came back. He beat Gene Silva, fought Volk again, lost it, came back, and now has beaten Garcia. He's very good, and he could be a pretty tricky fight for Ilia, right? Because he fights at a good pace. He can fatigue too, but I think Ilia has the worst issues of that, of the two of them. And he's got great jiu-jitsu, great grappling. He's a very big 145er. He hits like a truck. He's down to scrap, and he's extremely durable. Like that, like, that could run a risk of just sort of repeating what happened with Justin Gaethje, but at 145. I'm not picking that to happen necessarily. I'd have to think about it, but like, I think if you're just writing Diego Lopez off in a fight like that, that's foolish. That's underestimating him. And again, it's not that Ilia isn't necessarily the better fighter of the two. It's just that as a matchup, both in terms of the sort of skill set and in terms of the physical attributes, that could be rough for Ilia. Likewise, Gene Silva is always in the mix, and Gene Silva is a flawed dude, and Gene Silva could just wind up getting picked off by like top contenders such that he never even fights for a title or something. But Gene Silva is another guy that, like, would you be shocked if Gene Silva knocked out Ilia Topuria? Would anything about that shock you? Wouldn't shock me. Not saying I'd pick it to happen, but it's kind of like the Mauricio Rufy fight, right? And they're teammates, you know, Rufy and Gene Silva fight in kind of similar ways. And yeah, Gene Silva is the smaller of the two, so in that sense is an easier fight. But like, you know, it's sort of an out of the frying pan and into the fire if you're like, oh, I don't want to fight Mauricio Rufy and get a contender win at 155. I'm going to go back down to my natural weight class where I get to fight Gene fucking Silva of all people. You know what I mean? So it's like, in many ways, Ilia's in a tough spot, actually, because again, like, either way he goes, there's hope. There's hope that he could beat a top contender and then go back down to 145. There's even hope he could get his belt back. You know, there's hope that he beats someone like a Rufy and then, or someone like a Patty, and then fights for the belt and beats Justin in a rematch. There's hope for that. Or there's hope that Justin has retired or lost to Ilia, or something really silly has happened, like Max Holloway beats Conor McGregor, and then he rematches Justin, and he beats Justin, and now he's the lightweight champion. And Ilia, in the meantime, like, beats Rufy, and then goes and beats Max for the lightweight title or something like that. Like, there's a lot of ways this could play out, and there are many ways in which it plays out favorably for Ilia, right? And likewise, he could go down to 145, and he could knock out Volkanovski, or Evloev could beat Volkanovski, and he could go knock out Evloev or something. Not that that's a freebie either. I mean, Evloev is, you know, not a very dangerous dude and can be hittable, but like, I also could see him just exhausting Ilia with his grappling. Like, that could happen as well. So, you know, as good as Ilia is, and as much as he is a 145er, and he's thus far been better at 145 than he's been at 155, it's not a given that he's going to go on one of these, like, legendary runs, right? It's not a given that he's going to be a Jose Aldo or a Volkanovski or a Kamaru Usman down at 145. Because again, as much as he would probably kill Volk in a rematch, and as much as Volk is beating people like Diego Lopez, and as much as Volk, God willing, will beat Evloev, I'm not 100% sure Ilia beats any of those other guys. I'm not 100% sure he beats Evloev, and not 100% sure he beats Lopez, not 100% sure he beats Silva. So, all this to say, you know, it's very up in the air. You know, it's impossible, in my view, to make a strong ruling on any of this in terms of predicting the outcomes. Even if you know for a fact, like, what his next fight's going to be. Like, I mean, like, you can know for a fact Ilia's next fight is at 155 and it's against Rufy, or it's at 155 and it gets Patty, or it's at 155 and it's against Connor, or it's at 155 and it's against Armin. You can know that, or you can know it's at 145 and it's against Lopez, or it's against Volk in a rematch, or against Silva, or it's against Evloev. You can know any of those things as your initial given and say, tell me where it goes from here, and you'd have no real way of knowing, I think. That's a very, you know, it's just he's in a weird spot. You know, there's so much mentally involved. There's the physical recovery and the question of, like, will his face ever be the same? Will he ever be able to take a punch again? Mentally, will he have the confidence? What happens when people don't respect him anymore because the hype train's derailed and he's no longer this undefeated, like, rocket ship just sailing to the stars? Like, you know, how does that all come into play? And there's just questions about his style and about his physicality. There's questions about his gas tank. There's further questions about his grappling against some of these guys because, like I said, I always thought his grappling was a little overrated, and I think it was revealed to be correct the way he couldn't finish Justin Gaethje, and I know Justin's been working on his jiu-jitsu, but like I've said, I feel like other people could be put in those spots and get that finish, and Ilia couldn't. So yeah, like, how does his grappling hold up against an Arman Tsarukyan? How does it hold up if he has to grapple with Diego Lopez? How does it hold up against an Evloev? You know, unclear. And, you know, and his defense and his durability and stuff like that, I feel like is getting overly questioned at this point. But I mean, the durability is a real thing with the injuries now. But like, I think that's overstated as like a flaw. But like looking at his resume now, though, like the way people are sort of now looking back at his wins, and you know, his defenders are still defending him and still saying these are great wins and everything, and they are still great wins. But a lot of people are saying, oh, his title fights, they were all victories over old dudes, or if Max wasn't old, he was drained at featherweight, or whatever the narrative is. But I do think they were all old, including Max, and Emmett was old. You know what I mean? So like his last 4 wins, actually, his top contender win at featherweight, and then all 3 of his title wins were against older dudes. You know, the last like young guy he fought was Bryce Mitchell, right? I think. So even that is sort of now a question of like, yeah, what happens if you have to fight Gene Silva again, or if you have to fight Hoofy? Like, what happens? You know? Again, I'm not ruling Ilia out. I think this could all work out. I think he could beat everyone I've mentioned. I'd pick him to beat some, and I'd pick him to lose to others, but I think in every case, he's a live dog. I'm not picking any of these people. Armin, Hoofy, Lopez, whoever. I'm not picking any of these dudes to like just smash him and comfortably walk away with it. And I'm like, oh my God, what are they thinking? What are they thinking putting Ilia in with that guy? He'll be like a 4-1 underdog. I don't feel that way about any of these fights. But you know, the possibility is real that it all falls apart, that he does lose to one of these guys and then lose to another one and then call it quits, you know, because that could happen. Well, if he fights Hoofy, gets knocked out, goes down to 45, fights Lopez and gets knocked out, or fights Evloev and gets like grapple fucked, you know what I mean? Like, it could happen, and he could say, you know what, fuck it, I've lost 3 in a row, I'm rich, I didn't want to do this that long anyways, I'm just going to coach my brother. That could be his response. So what is my ruling, though? Because the whole title of this video and the whole topic of this video is, whom should he fight next? Like, which individual would I pick? I still would like him to see, I'd still like to see him take out someone at lightweight and then go down to 145. If he just did whatever I told him to do, and he couldn't be tempted to stick around, that's what I would encourage him to do. Since I don't think he'll do that, should he get the victory, I would just say go back down to 145, and I would say, I'd say fight Arnold Allen, because Arnold Allen is a good fighter. You know, he's coming off a win. I think he's coming off a couple wins. I did a whole video after his last fight where I sort of celebrated him as a fighter and his career and said he's underrated. And he's not the most dangerous dude, and it would be a good comeback fight. It would be a good way to, you know, get your confidence back. He'll have some ring rust or cage rust because he'll have been out recovering. We'll have Ilia. You know, it'll be the first time he's got to make the weight cut again after 2 fights at 155. Don't go in there with a killer. Don't go in there. Again, your face is just healed. Your brain is dehydrated again. Your confidence isn't there. You know, your timing might not be there. Don't go in there with Gene Silva. Don't go in there with Diego Lopez. And don't go in there with some stylistic chore like Evloev. Go in there with Arnold Allen, an all-rounder who likes to strike, who's not that dangerous, but who's still credible, who's still someone whom if you can beat him, if you can knock him out especially, you will get credit for. And people will be like, oh shit, okay, Ilia's back. Okay, fair enough. That wasn't a gimme. You know, that will be the reaction. And then a title shot will make sense at 145. So yes, whom should Ilia fight next? It's Arnold Allen at 145. That is my conclusion. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree with all these scenarios I laid out, my sort of train of thought here. You know, let me know if you think he should stay at 155, if he should chase the belt there. Let me know if he should go down to 145. Let me know if you're an Ilia hater and you think he should just retire because he's a bum and his face is broken. Let me know any thoughts you got down below. In any case, like and subscribe. Channel's taken off. You know, this is sort of the covering all the basics here at the end of each video. But as I've been saying, I'm putting out a ton of content right now. I'm cranking out like 5 videos a day on this channel, plus 1 on my second channel. That is a temporary push to grow the channel. That is not going to be a constant output, you know, for the, ad infinitum forever going into the future. This is temporary. So if you're overwhelmed by the content, if you're overwhelmed by the notifications, if you can't keep up, fear not, my friends. This is not forever. And just watch the videos you feel like watching. Like I've been saying, it's better to have too much than to have too little. And you're going to be appreciating this like next week when we have a week off from the fights and no one's putting out any fucking content. Okay, you're going to be wanting to come back to these Michael Walsh videos. So just bear with me. Stick with me. The channel's only taken off. And on that front, go check out my second channel. It's called Michael Walsh Nerd Stuff. I cover nerd stuff. It's starting to pick up as well as a channel. I cover comic books, anime, video games, sci-fi, the whole kit and caboodle. And in the last 2 days, I put out a video discussing how the Justice League live action film, both the Joss Whedon and the Snyder Cut versions, how they mishandled Superman. And then I did a follow-up video yesterday where I discussed how the James Gunn film, for entirely different reasons, also mishandled Superman. So those are very fun videos. I'm happy with those. I'll have another video dropping today. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out. If you're only interested in MMA, no worries. I've got you covered here. Just stick around. And in any case, take care.